How often do you rely on your calendar? You probably use it to tell what day of the week it is, maybe what month it is. Maybe you even keep track of what you need to do on what day. If you don't use a calendar, you might still use your phone or a planner to keep track of things. Now, I want you to think about what you would do without a way to keep track of time. The more you think about it, without some sort of time organization, the world would not run as it normally does. Picture civilization without a form of time. They just live through everything without even some sense of how old they are or what they need to do before dark. What if our world was this way? What would have been the consequences of not having a form of time organization like a calendar to keep track of the days? Let's examine what the calendar is, where it came from, and how it evolved from scratches on stone to becoming an essential part of our daily lives that changed the world forever. First of all, what is a calendar? A calendar is anything used by people to note the passage of days, seasons, etc. First, let's think about the calendar and its description concerning our daily lives. We use the calendar to keep track of what day of the week it is and what season we're in. When the calendar was first being invented in ancient times, checking a piece of paper for the date wasn't the case. People had to first notice patterns in the way the stars, moon, and sun moved, and try to relate it to their surroundings. Recording this information to keep track of the patterns and make a calendar was done in many different ways, including using pits to track flooding or making marks on bones or stone to keep track of seasons. This led to the many different types of calendars there are today. There are 4 primary types of calendars. Each type has a few different variations. The main types of calendars are empirical, calculated, and lunisolar, and also calendars with a wandering year. Empirical calendars are where months and years are determined by direct observation, whereas calculated calendars use either the moon, sun, or both to keep track of time as either lunar or solar calendars. Types of calendars that qualify as calculated calendars are the astronomical calendar, where the start of the year is determined by an equinox or solstice, and arithmetic solar calendars, where the length of the year is adjusted based on the sun to keep it in time. This is the way most calendars run, like the Gregorian and Julian calendar. Lunisolar calendars are where months are geared to the moon, but extra months may be added to keep it on track of the sun, such as Chinese calendars. Calendars with a wandering year are where each year contains a fixed number of days and don't rely on the moon or sun, like the Mayan calendar. Each of these types of calendars is different in accuracy and length. They got much more accurate and were changed over time as we noticed inaccuracy or were able to advance technology. There are many types of calendars because of different cultures and preferences. Different calendars may fit different kinds of societies' needs based on what is included in the calendar. Having each type of calendar fit its society makes its impact on people even greater. One example of a calendar that fits its society well is the Mayan calendar. It was a well-developed calendar for its time, considering it was invented relatively toward the beginning of when calendars were being made. It was used by several civilizations and cultures in Central America or Mesoamerica. It was most famously used by the Maya civilization, hence the name. The Maya calendar is unique because it uses a system of 3 interlacing calendars. These types are called the Hab, or the civil calendar, the Zolkin, or the divine calendar, and the long count calendar. The Hab is a 365-day solar calendar like ours, but is divided into 19 months, each month having a glyph to represent it. The Zolkin is a 260-day calendar with 20 periods of 13 days, used to determine religious events, and also has a glyph representation for each day. The long count is the calendar that kept track of longer periods. Each cycle is 2,800,000 days, or 7,885 years long. The Mayans believed that the world was destroyed and remade again after this much time. This created the 2012 phenomenon, which you may have heard of, where the Mayans essentially predicted that the world was going to end in 2012 because of the long count calendar. This is one reason that shows how the Mayan calendar had such an influence. Each of the different calendars are used at the same time in a wheel format to determine the date because each calendar has a different amount of time it represents. Each calendar also represents certain events, or holidays as we call them. Because of the way the Mayan calendar works, it fits the culture of the Maya and had a great impact on them, such an impact that we still think of the Mayan calendar today, an example of which being the 2012 phenomenon. As you can see, calendars are very complicated and can vary based on culture. You may think our calendar that we use today was just made and that was it, but that's not the case. Our calendar today wasn't made quite as easily as you may think. It went through many changes throughout its existence. Our calendar used today is called the Gregorian calendar. It is a solar calendar made by the Romans and was influenced by the Julian calendar during the Gregorian reform. The Julian calendar was invented around the mid-1st century BCE. The Julian calendar started becoming less accurate as time went on because its length of a year was 365.25 days. Why does this matter? Well, this is too long because there's an accumulation of a 7-day error after 1,000 years. This caused people to correct the errors in the Gregorian reform. One reason this happened was Easter, one of the most important holidays for Catholic Romans. The date that helped determine Easter, the vernal equinox, was 10 days off where it was supposed to be. Everyone wanted this to be changed. The change to the Julian calendar became known as the Gregorian calendar and eventually was adopted in all of Europe, the last country being Russia in 1918. We changed the calendar mainly to fix the inaccuracy, but not only that, we also made it better fit our traditions, and its impact can be seen today. Throughout history, people have made many changes to the calendar to make it more accurate. You may be thinking, why would someone spend time to do that? Why wouldn't they just leave it alone? Because it still helps us keep track of things even if it wasn't changed. Well, we pay attention to so much detail about the calendar because it truly is an important part of our lives and culture that we rely on. Looking back at its invention, we see that it was a turning point in time organization. It is the basis of organization in our world. Everyone plans things based on the calendar, usually without even knowing it. Without the calendar, society would have no way to organize time. Because we make our calendar fit our culture, this impacts our daily lives even more. The Mayans, for example, used their calendars to plan different religious events and other dates based on their calendars. This fit their culture, but also changed their way of life and organization of not only time, but their society. It is clear that we absolutely need some form of calendar, not only to be organized, but to fit our culture. You may not realize it, but the calendar was also one of the first things that people used astronomy for, given it was very basic astronomy, but it was still astronomy. As we tried to make the calendar more and more accurate, we had to become more and more advanced in astronomy. This was one of the many reasons we became advanced in astronomy. Because calendars can predict astronomical events, for example, it means that astronomy had to be involved in the calendar. And because astronomy was involved with the calendar, it helped kickstart our thoughts about space. It was one factor out of many that affected what we can do today and possibly in the future with space. This shows that not only did the calendar affect our world today through organization and culture, but could also affect what we can do in the future astronomy-wise. It could even help organize what our culture becomes in the future. Over the course of thousands of years, the calendar has been affecting the world through organization, recording of time, new ideas, and culture. It turned the world around from no way of organization to being able to plan and giving a basis for our traditions, which led to the way our world works today. So mark the date and remember how the invention of the calendar changed the world.